Hey, everybody. So for the first part of this, well, I'll do a really quick introduction, and I'm going to start doing that now. So it's the least important part of this whole thing. So folks can miss that. And as they join in, we'll get to the presentations on the actual projects and the discussion. If you can mute yourselves for this first part, right? So just while Trent and Kimura are talking about what they're doing, then we can all go off mute and have a sort of free for all, just open, free flowing conversation. For anybody, oh, actually, I've recorded this, so just be forewarned, this will exist for all eternity. But if anybody can't make it or needs to drop off early, you'll be able to access this later. We'll post it on our website where we do webinars and things like that. I think I know just about everybody here, but for anybody who I haven't met yet, I'm Abe Solorio. I'm the Community Outreach Manager at Sustainable CT, and I run our funding program, which is sort of bringing us all together today, the Community Match Fund. I'm going to share my screen really quickly just to show you some quick updates on where things stand with the match fund right now. It's been pretty exciting as we move forward. Can you all see the Sustainable CT landing page right now? I know I've asked you to mute, so it's sort of impossible to know if you can see that, but I'm going to guess that you can. So right now we've got, you can probably see yourselves there too in my video. As of this morning, I think we just crossed over 3,900 donors, so we're well on our way to 4,000 people having contributed to the match fund. We've got the 100 projects is a little bit misleading. It's actually at, I think, 97 distinct projects, some transferred over from round 1 into round 2. So we're almost at 100 projects, and those have popped up in every corner of the state. I think we've got 53 towns that now have community match fund projects. And some, Hartford, I think, has 12 projects, New Haven has 17. Newtown has 3 or 4. So
you said microphone.
Have multiple projects too. And we're about to cross over 1.2 million that's been invested in community match fund projects cumulatively since we launched the program in September of 2019. So you can see there that's 643,000 is from community investment, and then the other 542,000 is the match from Sustainable CT. For anyone who hasn't actually seen this, this is now where we're hosting the community match fund. I'll post the links to this in the page or in the chat of the Zoom session, but we're now working with Patronicity, which is a new crowdfunding partner. And this is the new landing page for it. So you can find eligibility docs, schedule calls, things like that. And then if you scroll down here, you can see all of the projects that have started or completed in what we're calling round 2, since we switched over to Patronicity in this past July. So you can see there's lots of projects that are active right now in fundraising. And they have really, similar to when we launched the program, they've spanned the spectrum of sort of sustainability, wide ranging, broadly related to anything within our program. So it's been really exciting to see the projects that you guys have been doing and contributing to. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And so just sort of to quickly recap on the focus for today, this is going to be a meeting that we hold every 2 months, just sort of to bring people together. And the goal of this is really to find out, one, it's to connect folks who are doing this type of work and leading projects and doing these initiatives. And we're curious to see, one, just if folks can, sort of share neat things that they're doing or that they've heard of, that they can inspire each other, but also with the goal of creating more collaboration so that these projects move from being sort of one-off to being things that maybe happen in a multi-town basis, regionally, statewide. Because one of the things that we want to see is what we can do and what everybody here can do to help this stuff happen more on a systematic level, right? Where it's not just an individual group who does something and it's hugely impactful and important, but then somebody the town over or in another part of the state, they have no idea. And then it needs to sort of start from scratch too. So we don't have answers for that, but what we're interested in finding out is how we can help sort of bring people together and make these things happen in a more concerted, broader way. So to that end, I wanted to kick things off by, we're loosely focused on creating and activating green spaces and natural environmental solutions for today's session, but it's really broader, right? I mean, everybody is wearing multiple hats and doing different types of projects, but 2 really inspiring and fun initiatives that we've seen since we launched the Community Match Fund are the projects so Trent McCann, who's the manager of environmental education and volunteer programs at the Mill River Park Collaborative in Stamford, and Kimura Harrington, who's the founder and visionary of Kimura's Cultural Corner in Hartford. led 2 different projects that are, so, they're focused on different things, but they loosely relate to this broader goal, and have been really neat to learn about and to see happen. So I'm going to pass off to Kimura. If you want to just sort of take over, share about what you've been doing. We'll then pass it off to Trent and then open it up for general conversation.
Okay, so what I've been doing is creating spaces for humans to come together to do what humans need to do when they come together. And that's broad because on that one, and this is, we're going to get to why this was such a wonderful way to bring in money for our project. The end goal is always what the community needs when you're working with Kimura's Cultural Corner. And that can change as we do things. And that very often doesn't sound like what the cool things, the cool projects that are being funded sound like. So when you're working with us, when you're hanging out with us, it all makes great sense. When it comes time to figure out how to get across to funders what we're doing without having the right grant writer who can use the right language to get it across, it just kind of falls out there. But what we're doing is we've got space on Sterling Street in Hartford, and we're building what we're calling the Sterling Street Sanctuary. And we were gifted about 2 acres that was a parking lot for the seal test trucks that stopped being that parking lot about 20 years ago. So we've got just this very interesting land, it's all overgrown. There are places where there's still concrete, there's places where there's still asphalt, and there's places where folks from outside of the community and possibly as well inside of the community have just used it as a dumping space. And we're in a neighborhood, so the Sterling Street Sanctuary is in the north end of Hartford, which is a neighborhood where there really aren't a lot of legal gathering spaces for folks. And there's a lot of reasons why people who live in apartment buildings on Albany Avenue or off Albany Avenue can't hang out in public spaces around their homes. That's deemed illegal, and they can't do this. On top of that, we've got we have a community that's really working hard to figure out how we can bring different voices and different people together to have conversations about the things that we need to talk about so that we can move forward as a nation, as a community. And I'm not going to go too far into the backstory of that because it's 2020 and I think we all pretty much have an idea of what that looks like. So as we were looking at how do we continue our inside work, which is this work of bringing different people and different ideas and different thoughts together, and then allowing ourselves to think about what those thoughts look like, we've got this outside beautiful space that we're gifted, and a labyrinth just makes sense. A labyrinth, which is not a maze, but it gives us a space to walk and contemplate and do that beautiful meditation that it takes to synthesize ideas and get to other ideas and get to other places. So a whole bunch of weirdo freak hippies decided that we were going to do this. We wanted to create this, and we saw the Love Your Block grant, which is in Hartford, and that's $1,000 grant. If anyone has ever tried to build a labyrinth, $1,000 is not going to get you there at all. But that $1,000 Love Your Block grant gave us a space to talk to community and make it clear, hey, this is what we want to do. This is how we want to do it. And let's just talk about it so that we can do this. So we did it. We got that $1,000. We got a lot of buzz. We got a lot of folks coming by the space and enjoying the space. And then we heard about sustainable CT. And I just laid out for you one of my, so a stumbling block is getting across these esoteric ideas to the funders. The other places we're an LLC, we're not a nonprofit. And there's a lot of real reasons behind that. One of those is we are in a capital city, we're in Hartford, which means that most of our land is not taxable. I think the north end of Hartford, there are upwards of 100 nonprofits that are not paying taxes to the city of Hartford, and arguably are not putting as much back into that neighborhood as some of us think that they possibly could or should. So when it comes to getting money for these projects, I've got a few extra hurdles. So this one was great because, okay, guess what? You can be an LLC and do this. And then there is that other part that was the put up or shut up part. And for me, put up or shut up is incredibly important. Like, this is what I do, let my work speak for me. And I heard that this was a match grant and I needed to get a bunch of people from my community to say, hey, Kimura, what you're doing is cool. We'll give you $5, we'll give you $10, we'll give you $20 for this. And for me, that was incredibly important. I can get a whole bunch of folks to give me $5,000. So this organization will give me $5,000 and I can give my community what we need. It was a win-win-win everywhere. One interesting issue that I ended up finding that I had was convincing people who wanted to give me large sums of money that I really wanted smaller sums of money. And what I really wanted was to have this community and to be able to share, as I can today, like this list of name after name after name after name after name of people who really gave $3, $10, $5. We got a couple $250 donations, and that was nice. But looking at what the sustainable CT can do, and what I think this can do, and what I love about this, is it really does bring community together. I mean, we work with the Free Center in Hartford, but I see Zoe's here, and I know that they've got their project going. So it's great to be able to share our project and say, this is what we're doing. And this, hey, Zoe, and this is what the Free Center is doing. And guess what? So they've got their garden project, we've got ours, and it dovetails and it's beautiful. And instead of it being this ugly thing that happens so often, which is this competing of, no, I'm doing it, so I deserve the money, and I'm doing, and so all of us small groups of people who have these wonderful, great, and amazing ideas don't see how to collaborate and bring them together. This one gave us a place, and also in the staggering of the campaigns, it gave us space to really be there and bolster each other. So all summer, every Saturday, we had a bazaar going. And at the bazaar, people were giving little bits of money, people were supporting our vendors. And it was really nice to be able to have folks from other projects come visit our project and talk about their projects. And if you go back and look at a lot of what our campaign looked like, it was us talking to other weirdo people with these strange ideas that were getting funded through Sustainable CT, and us having these conversations about, wow, isn't this what it could be? And rather than just getting the money and then sending out the award letter telling people how great we are for doing this thing, I really think this gave us a place to inspire other folks to do it, and inspire other folks who are doing the campaign already to just keep doing it. But then hopefully other people outside with other organizations, others, loosely formed groups of friends who want to support community, saw this as a way that they can come together and do this. I've been selling this one to absolutely everyone I know with a great idea. It's like, oh, that's awesome. Check out Sustainable CT. You need to do this. You also need to get your Patreon. So that's going to create an issue with patronosity. We'll have that conversation in a bit. I'm done talking. Abe, I'm going to mute myself, and then whatever needs to happen happens.
Awesome. Thank you, Kumar. I need to have you basically just on any time that I do a presentation about the Community Match Fund, I'm just going to not show up and have you present instead. So expect.
You really need to see me in cranky space. It is rare that I sound like this. Yes. Yeah.
Well, so actually, one thing quickly, do you mind sharing more about what your I know the Labyrinth is just phase one of the project too. So do you mind sharing just a little bit more about what you envision for the future of the space in phases 2, 3?
So when I say community gathering space, I truly mean community gathering space, and language around what that looks like. I know that has a certain sound, just like community garden has a certain sound and such. But community gathering space where we really do bring different facets and different pieces of community together in the ways that make sense for us to come together. So I have the KCC where I do cultural humility training, and I work with different groups and different people, and that's wonderful. But the beauty in the work comes when we can get those people together to have conversations. So the space that we have, we're building for phase one, we're getting that labyrinth set so that we can start having the conversations and we can start bringing people together. So KCC, we've got members. And one of the ideas of how we'll be using the labyrinth is we'll say, take your mind where it goes, but a member from Simsbury and a member from the north end of Hartford will both be giving the same prompt, which we can say, in order to grow as humanity, we all need food, right? And so then those two folks will show up at the labyrinth 10 a.m. on Saturday. They'll walk the labyrinth, and then at the end, they'll get to the end and sit and have the conversation that they have. And that's our idea of how we build community. From those conversations, we'll figure out what more programming on the land looks like. But our next project after this is to build the compostable toilets. And again, you heard compostable toilets, as everything that we're doing there it hits 12 different reasons. We're showing folks that this can be done. Folks, if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm a melanated woman. I am also giving you this idea, I'm a biracial woman in America. And hearing that these different facets of myself don't meet each other because we don't understand that we all care for the same things, we're just coming at it from different ways, breaks my soul. So as we build those compostable toilets, and as we build these, idea of like these expanded outhouses, we all can do this and we all want this. We've got 2 acres in the north end of Hartford. It is rare that people think about 2 acres in the north end of Hartford as a place where there are beehives, where there are fruit trees, where there are many different Black, brown, and white folks coming together in communities. So phase 2, toilets. After that, the indoor-outdoor classroom with the cooking space. And then we can do the greenhouse and stuff because we've got some partnerships going. And then we want to get our actual greenhouse. This is probably a 5-year process. But within there, the more important, so building is great. The more important part of the work is building the human connections. So this summer, so on Saturdays we had the bazaar. On Tuesdays we had a partnership with Toivo, where we had a yoga instructor there on the land offering yoga for absolutely everyone who showed up. And again, it's the north end of Hartford, so we've got the folks in the hood and the Toivo community. So you've got folks who are connected with Toivo who are feeling safe because they've heard some KCC stuff, they've taken part in some KCC stuff, and Sarah from Toivo is there. So we had a whole bunch of white folks from the suburbs doing yoga outside on Sterling Street in the north end of Hartford, which was amazing. And it sounded like the north end of Hartford, which meant that there are a ton of sirens going by because that's what happens. And again, so this place of building community and really stepping into what difference looks like and what it feels like. Our yoga instructor, this is one of my favorite stories. Sarah's there and we're there and we're like doing our meditation and the police sirens go by and she says, okay, check in with yourself, check in with your surroundings, hear what you hear. Is there judgment there? What happens from there, that's the beautiful place of me throwing it out into the universe so the universe can do what the universe needs to do. But we're throwing it out there and seeing what happens.
Awesome. Thank you for adding on. It's too bad that you don't have another fundraiser going right now because I would be donating and I imagine a whole bunch of other people would too. So we'll talk more about.
We'll get there.
We'll talk more about rounds 2, 3, 4, 10, moving into the spring and things like that. So thanks so much for sharing, Kimora. Let's just jump right into it. Trent, do you want to take it away and tell us about the Sustainability Garden?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Abe. All right, I'm going to try to match Kimora's energy. I don't think I can, but thank you all for having me. I want to give a little context that will kind of help to understand this project and why we chose to use the Sustainable CT Fund and Patronicity. So I work with Mill River Park Collaborative, which, if you're not familiar, is a public-private nonprofit partnership in Stamford, which was founded about, probably 20 years ago at this point, as a effort for an ecological reclamation project of the Rippewam River that runs through downtown Stamford, feeding into the Long Island Sound. If you've visited in the past decade or so, you'll see that it has come an extremely long way. And as a result, we've kind of really grown our nonprofit organization from this really kind of fundraising, planning focused organization into a real park conservancy management organization. And so this year was my 6th year running what we call the Mill River Park Stewards Program, which is a paid high school year-round internship for 12 Stamford teenagers who are interested in conservation, urban planning, sustainability, food insecurity, environmental justice, any and all of the above. And so we have this parcel of land kind of south of the main park, but still in the river corridor that it's not really being used for anything at this point. And it's not really part of any of the long-term development plans for the corridor. So my boss and I, we wanted to do something really creative, and we wanted to involve the stewards so that they would have kind of this sense of ownership over the concept and over the creation of something in this space. And so we kind of got them together and brainstormed ideas and, kind of pushed them in certain directions, but really let them kind of run with the idea. And we were honestly amazed at kind of how they internalized and then created this concept. So the park itself, the main Mill River Park, is about 17 acres of natural native riparian meadows. And they're incredible, they're beautiful, but it's not particularly replicable for people unless you happen to have multiple riparian acres running through your property. If you do, that's great, but most people don't really have that. You know, maybe you have a yard, but a lot of people, especially in Stamford, at most have maybe a patio or a balcony. And so the stewards they wanted to do something that they felt people could replicate on their own in some capacity, because they felt as though the park, albeit wonderful and this amazing community resource, it wasn't something that people could replicate to improve their own sustainability in their lives and their own ecological footprint. So they came up with this idea of the sustainability garden, which is kind of this, very similar to the Kimura's project, is kind of this like multifaceted public space that will be primarily a demonstration space that people will be able to replicate at whatever scale, whether it's in a backyard or on a front stoop. There will be aspects of this project that they can replicate. So sustainable landscape design, composting, native and edible plant species. And so they came up with this idea, and then they did not know this at this point, but they were going to be the ones who would primarily be engaged in the fundraising process using the sustainable CT platform. So we have this year we had 9 Mill River Park stewards who are all between the ages of 15 and 19 years old. So telling them that they were challenged with collectively fundraising $7,500 and that they would have to go forth and actually kind of ask people for money, what was a daunting task for them. So we didn't just send them to the wolves. They got to meet with some of the professional fundraisers that Mill River works with. We did a couple of workshops with them. We really leaned into utilizing social media because they're teenagers and that's what they know, that's what they're already good at. So we wanted to empower them to utilize this skill that they already had in a new context, in a new way. And I'm not gonna lie, it started slow. I think Abe can attest to that. It started real slow. But by the end, they were able to do the vast majority of the fundraising. And then maybe 2 days before the end of our campaign, we sent out a news blast to the Mill River Park mailing list, which I mean is pretty large. But that did fill in the final gaps, but the stewards themselves, those teenagers, were the ones that did more than half of the fundraising. And they were very proud of that. I think they surprised themselves first and foremost, but they were very proud that they are going to be able to put their name on this little pocket of their own community that they know will better the lives of the people they get to come in contact with it. So that was really awesome. And we, just because of the timing and it becoming winter, we have not really taken any concrete steps in terms of like boots on the ground yet at this point. We're really aiming for like probably February or March to start, actually making some on the ground changes, but they have asked me basically every single day when we're going to actually start doing stuff because they're very excited and antsy and they want to get this project off the ground. And so it was really a great success. And I see Cameron here, so I want to shout out to her because she was very helpful in the success of this campaign. And that's really, that's about it. That's the story.
Thanks, Trent. That's so I always love when we do these calls where we bring people together who have been leading the projects. It's selfishly for me, just because it's really fun to hear you guys talking about the work that you're doing and to get sort of this additional info, right? Like, sure, I I did know that the fundraising started slowly, and I know we talked about sort of the stewards learning as they went along and finding out that Facebook posts and Instagram posts, they can be useful, but they don't always lead to tons of donations right away.
Mm-hmm.
So, thanks for sharing about that, as well as what you guys are doing and what you have planned. And so this is actually too, I guess this is a similar question I had to Kimura. You've got a couple of different phases planned for this project, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what do you guys think it looks like at the end?
Yeah, so at this point, really what we're thinking of doing is probably 2, maybe 3 phases, and kind of integrating each phase with each new cohort of the stewards program. So this year's group, well, it honestly started with the previous group, the very early stages of the concepts and planning. This current group really were the ones that got it off the ground and did all the fundraising. And they will be involved in the early stages of the actual construction and beginning to build the project. Obviously, if there are stewards who graduate from our program and they're interested in continuing to be involved with the sustainability garden, we'll figure out a way to make that happen and keep them involved. But the next cohort of stewards, which will come in June 2021, will probably be the ones to do the fundraising for what we're calling the interpretation and placemaking phase. So that'll be developing, like Kimura was saying, an outdoor classroom and interpretive signage, and really ways that bring the space to life, not just to educate people that are in the space so that they kind of understand what it is that they're looking at and experiencing, but as a way of like really engaging people through various placemaking programs and interpretation, and teaching them how they can replicate what they're seeing on a smaller scale at their own homes.
Awesome, thanks. So
Yeah.
I actually have another question, but I don't want to ask all the questions. And this is really like, the point of this is for you guys all to connect. So I want to just open it up. If you have questions for Trent or Kimura, about the project, about fundraising, about the community match fund, whatever it is, I've got some probing questions or some things that I thought through beforehand that I can throw in the chat if that's helpful for people. But if you have questions, just feel free to unmute yourself, ask, or if you want to post them in the chat, I think we can read them there and answer them. So I'll leave it to you guys for that for now.
I actually do have a question or would like to interact. My name is Mary Lucilla, and I'm from the Thomaston South Thomas Park Revitalization Committee. Our park is a very small little postage stamp area in Thomaston, Connecticut, directly across from where the Seth Thomas Clock Factory was a couple hundred years ago originated. So I was very much interested in hearing about this internship, and one of the things that I am hoping with our committee that we can do is bring youth into the project or for future usage at the park. I thought that the internship idea was extremely fun, and I would like to say that we have a heritage park, but I don't want it to always be about the history. I want to see us make new history. And to get the teenagers or high school kids in our area interested in the project, and maybe internships or that sort of thing is a new concept to what we're hoping to do. So is there a way that you started this internship program with the high school in your area? I'm thinking this is more, what Trent was talking about, and because I'd like to make, some strides towards getting that going.
Yeah, so I cannot take credit as being the person that initially launched this program. I have led the last 6 cohorts. However, my boss, Nia Jackson, did start the program, and she led the first 2 cohorts. She came to Mill River from the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, where they have an incredible 4-tiered internship program. that, I mean, you know, they have, I don't want to say unlimited resources, but they have a lot of resources to make that kind of project a reality. In my 6 years, I can speak to the fact that I think sustainability, climate change, conservation has become such a forefront of just general discourse and the news and kind of the concerns that the teenagers have in their lives. My first summer, I think we had 14 or 15 applicants for the program and basically took all of the kids that wanted to do it. This most recent year was weird because of COVID, but in 2019, I had over 100 applicants for 12 spots. And that was through strictly word of mouth amongst teenagers. I did not reach out to high school guidance counselors. I did not do any sort of like paid marketing or anything. All we did was put it up on our Facebook and encourage previous stewards to encourage their friends and people that they knew. I think that honestly, just putting the word out there is so effective. They come to us so concerned about climate change and sustainability, and they're honestly not even sure what exactly it is that they're concerned about or should be concerned about. They're just so hungry to learn more and kind of be the spark for positive change in their communities. It's really incredible and inspiring, and truthfully, by far my favorite part of my job is working with those teenagers. So if you can find a way to fund even one or a handful of positions, I have no doubt that you will find very motivated high school students that want to be involved.
Excellent. I'd like to just share that you're, it's inspiring, you know, the teenagers and youth who want to get involved. And I believe in take pride in where you come from and learn how to pay it forward. So those are two things that we'd like our youth in our area to get involved with. Thank you very much for your feedback.
Of course, yeah.
Hey, Mary, good to see you first. And then one other thing too, there are a bunch of groups who have led community match fund projects that either used interns, you know, as organizations or groups that already had internship programs, but there are others that the match fund project was to create an environmental steward internship program. So something like that is a fit for the match fund too. So we could talk about that, and I'd be happy to connect you with some of the groups who have actually done that too, where they're creating their own internship programs.
Great, win-win.
Yeah.
Abe, this is Carrie Shea from Friends of Zion Hill Cemetery in Hartford. Thanks for putting this together. Hi, Cameron, to see your face for the first time. Thanks for all the help you gave us. I was wondering if you might be interested in putting together over the spring and the summer a series of just little site visits to these various gardens and spaces. I think even if we're still sort of muddling through COVID, you know, getting together in the outdoors at some of these sites is something that we could probably do quite safely. And it's great to hear about these places, but to experience them and be able to get together and talk about them in those places would be, I think, really, really interesting. I also think that a lot of these places, I mean, I live in Hartford. My grandmother's boyfriend worked at the seal test factory, and I have no idea where it is. And when we were doing our project in Zion Hill, a lot of our volunteers who live in the neighborhood said that they had never been into the cemetery before. So I was just and I'll offer to host the first one. But, you know, something like a little, you know, 1 hour on a Saturday, anybody who wants to come and learn can come and learn, walk around, share thoughts, that sort of thing. Just an idea.
That's an awesome idea. So yes, certainly for the spring. And I think too, I mean, one of the challenges with this is that these projects are always sort of staggered, right? I mean, many are happening at the same time, but not always in the same places. So it's making sure that there's things to share. Like I know on Kamora's end, we've been waiting on excavators and money to get sent over for a while now. So projects don't always, for different reasons, don't always move forward as quickly as you might hope for. But yes, I think that's a great idea. And we could do sort of a regional one. I mean, in Hartford, there's a lot of projects. In New Haven, there's a lot. So we could do some city tours too. And yeah, I mean, I think this is the idea of this, right? Is to connect you guys who are doing this work. Our role here, sure, we provide funding and have the match fund, and that's great. But you guys are the people out there actually making stuff happen and doing the work. So yeah, Zoom connections are great. I think in-person connections and actually seeing these projects and interacting with them would be fantastic. So I'm taking notes on interesting ideas that people have, and I've put site visits down. So yes, for sure, I'll try to plan some of those for the spring. And do you actually want to share a little bit about your project too?
Sure. So I'm from Hartford. I'm the fourth generation of my family to live in Hartford, but I went away for 40 years and then came back and am living in the Frog Hollow neighborhood, which is just directly sort of south of the capital area there. And one day was on a walk and came upon this cemetery that I'd never really noticed before. And it was kind of dirty and there were mattresses but kind of made my way in and discovered, sort of like Columbus discovered America, this 24-acre historic cemetery. Actually, it's several cemeteries. There are several Jewish cemeteries within the larger city cemetery. And just a beautiful, beautiful space, and also the highest point in the city of Hartford. So at the top of Zion Hill, in the middle of this cemetery, you have some of the most spectacular city views of Hartford. It's just a block from Park Street, so it's a real bustling area. And it just needed some love. And I don't spend a lot of time on social media, but evidently on social media, there had been a whole bunch of folks complaining and slamming and just, throwing shade on this cemetery and the city. And I thought we can do better than just complain. And so we began gathering volunteers and doing little cleanups, and it expanded into landscaping projects. And now we're talking about some sort of spring festival, celebration, parade. I don't know, I lived in New Orleans, so everything has to include a parade and costuming and alcohol. And so in any case, we're just sort of doing our thing, and people are just falling in love with it. And there's a large group of IV drug users who have been using the cemetery, and there's a water spigot in there and so forth. And we actually have been having conversations with them. And some of them have even agreed to kind of place their refuse in these boxes that we've provided. And so it's just been a great experience. And even folks who don't participate, but who walk by this like gateway project that we did, where we took sort of an empty, lifeless corner and created these beautiful gardens, and gardens that spill out onto the street. Folks walk by and just, thank us and are loving on it. So it's been a great project. We'd love to get more people involved, and we'd love some good ideas. And this Connecticut Sustainability Project really propelled the whole thing forward. I had been very resistant to the crowdsourcing campaign. I had been firmly, I hate crowd, and it just turned out to be the best thing. We raised all the money we had wanted to raise. Cameron held my hand and walked me through it. And, folks who, I mean, it just never occurred to me that, anybody other than my friends whose arms I would have to twist would give money, and folks who, they kind of found us on the internet and gave money to it. And we signed everybody who gave us money up onto our mailing list. And some of them now have actually come out and participated in events. So I'm sure you all have similar experiences, but it really has been great.
Thanks, Carrie. That's awesome to hear about the project. We may have to take your idea of a parade and a festival and bring some alcohol and other things to the site visits. Maybe we'll make it a little bit more festive. So there's a question, Julie from New Milford, who's leading a project right now to restore a river that runs through the center of New Milford. She's asking what your biggest challenges were initially in getting your projects off the ground. So Kimora, Trent, if you guys want to take the lead on that, but I think a lot of the people here have led projects too, so anybody else is welcome to talk about some of that.
I'd have to say one hurdle that we definitely discussed was the trust factor and patronicity, and that it was just a brand new thing that people didn't know. And with our project, and many of these projects, we're introducing a brand new concept, so that has people uncomfortable, just a little bit uncomfortable. And then we were telling them that the way that they had to give us their money was from this other uncomfortable way. And so I've got a whole lot of folks who are great with Cash App and who really, really enjoy that. And then many people who want to write checks or just want to give money, and this idea of signing up for another thing. So I'd spent a year really massaging people into this idea of, be a monthly donor and join us on Patreon, and getting folks who are not comfortable setting up monthly recurring payments, but talking them into this, and then needing to talk them into this. There's another thing that's kind of similar, and we need to do this. And one of the things that we talked about, I think, is like, this is still fairly new. So I think in 5 years, this won't be the same issue for a lot of folks. But it was that I don't know exactly what you're doing, but I can kind of believe in this. And now you want me to jump into this other thing that I don't know about, and that might be just a little bit too much for me.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of echo that sentiment that, we had people who were like, well, can't I just give you $10? Or, they were having, I guess, a hard time kind of like just wrapping their head around the matching aspect of this. There's also the fact that the concept was being explained to them by a teenager. So I can't necessarily speak to how great of a job they did at explaining how this works. So we kind of, a large portion of my job responsibility is like engaging these teenagers. So I kind of had to add this extra layer of difficulty to my project, in that I was using teenagers as a conduit for raising the money, which, I think it has its pros and its cons. I think there were probably people who donated just because a kid asked them, and maybe they wouldn't have been inclined to do so. But it took a while to build that momentum. As I said before, we started off with very slow fundraising for the first few weeks to month of our project. And then I think once they got more comfortable with it, and once they got the hang of it and had a couple of positive interactions, it snowballed quickly, but it was very slow to get off the ground.
One thing I think when we dealt with the crowdfunding piece and just this new way of asking for money and new way of funding this, is an advantage that we have in Hartford is we are so nonprofit heavy, and we really are projects that will not serve the community heavy. And so in selling the idea of this, there's that extra piece of being able to say, hey, we're going to do this. And if we can prove, so here's our big plan, and this is what's going to happen on this land. And if we can prove to them that we want this, then they're going to help us do this and this and this. And it really is a much different way of bringing people in, and then also selling people on the project. We're a group, we're a community, and we don't have a lot of money, but if we together can get $5,000, then this group is going to give us $5,000, and then we can step back and show them how incredibly amazing we are. So it was really taking a lot of what we have going as the KCC, but also really keying in on what the community has happening. So Trent, thinking about you working with teenagers, they know no one's listening to them. They know that they are stepping into a world where climate change is going to address and affect them in ways that's not going to affect a 30, 40, or 50-year-old. So they've got a much different investment. And I really enjoyed like listening to you say they've got a teenager explaining it to them. That is where I figure out what the message is supposed to be. So I've got our team and I tell them what we're doing. And then they go tell other people what we're doing. And then that third person, when I get to hear that third person walking down the street saying, oh yeah, they're gonna build a maze and I don't know, but they're gonna have food in there. Okay, we're going to go from that. And that's what the conversation is going to sound like. But listening to this vision get translated at least 3 or 4 times by the people who are supposed to care lets me know what I need to care about and what I need to key in on so that we can keep building this as a community. And then Abe, yeah, you spoke about getting an excavator has been hard. Like that, the hardest part for me has been the part that I don't understand. So the construction part of getting construction people to do construction-y things. And the way I just explained that is how I've been explaining it to the community, in that they can trust me. If you give me money, trust me to do what I'm going to do with it. This is what it is. But very clearly, these technical and these other aspects of as we're stepping into this new way of doing things, there are going to be roadblocks. And rather than try to like smooth them over and pretend as if the roadblocks aren't there, like, dude, there's a new thing happening and we don't know how to get over this hurdle. We're going to do it, but we're not exactly sure how. That has been wonderful because I thought that this was going to be built before November, where we took a cross-country road trip. Yeah, right.
Deadline.
In my mind, before Thanksgiving, community, we were going to walk this together. It was going to be beautiful. We were going to write about it. Dude, it was going to be amazing. And ground hasn't been broken yet, but we finally found the excavator. But really keeping people in the process. And this has given us this place because as we brought all these new people, we got all of their information and they've now become part of this larger community and they're constantly getting updates. So as we get ready to do more phases, they will be updated on where we're going. And we just keep grabbing more and more humans. Awesome.
Tamara, we were very surprised that Public Works in Wyndham is like eager to help us. They have a whole crew that works on special projects. So that's who's doing a lot of our excavating for us, theoretically in the spring. But of course they have their regular schedule. So we have to be really flexible about deadlines. I'd also suggest, that's great leadership is to say, this is the goal. Oh, this is how we're going to get there. But we're all working to that direction. But asking for help when you need help and making it public, to me, has always worked. Somebody comes forward and it expands your allies. So there's more and more people involved in the project and it becomes more and more of a community project. So yeah, absolutely. Just put it right out there. We needed a bookkeeper of all things. Somebody volunteers. We couldn't believe it. Somebody volunteered instantly. So just put it out there on Facebook or wherever and say, this is what we need. And you'll be really surprised, I think, of all the little connections that get made, which are integral, I think, to these projects. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Harvey, I know you want to. Oh, sorry, I don't want to interrupt Pam. Go ahead, Harvey. If you still want to address her to that question, feel free to jump in.
No, let Harvey go first, and then I'll chime in.
Well, I have something different to talk about. It's a different project, so I don't want to interrupt this.
Okay, yeah, okay. I'll just be a minute. I just was launching off of Kamara's project and what Friends of Garden. I'm not sure your name. I see Friends of Garden. Listen, it's a pleasure working with Abe and hi Cameron. It's good to see you in person. I work with the Coalition for Sustainable Cheshire. I also work with the South Central Regional Council of Governments, but the Coalition for Sustainable Cheshire, we just were established this year, and we had a backyard composting project. So we were able to raise money for 82 composters and gave them out, and people were so excited. They were so happy to get these composters, and there was a whole education campaign rolled in with it, so they knew how to use the composter, and they were asking, you know, too, because some of them were first-time composters. But you know, what I wanted to launch off of is, we're not going to know if we don't ask. You know, if we don't ask, we try to focus on what we can do. Right now, people are looking to help. They're looking for something to do. They're looking for purpose and structure, especially during COVID times right now. And it makes you feel good to be part of something, part of the bigger picture. You know, what are we all here for? To help each other, to make a difference, right? So, so this is what this is all about. This whole community match fund and community, and I want to build a labyrinth in Cheshire. So I'm going to be reaching out to you, Kamora, to find out the steps that you took and what you're using to build it and all of that. So I'll be reaching out to you there, because I think we have some space here for that, and I would love to see that. You know, just awesome. And everybody, all the projects and all the stuff we work on are so important and so meaningful in so many different levels. So I thank Abe and I thank Cameron and all of you here for your contribution to people in the world and the earth. And let's be excited and move forward with more. You know, it's like Abe says, just call him and you have a project idea. An 8-year-old can have a project idea, right? Is that what you said? I'm like, oh my gosh, an 8-year-old. You know, my kids are that age, that's the other thing. 20-year-olds, high school and college kids, my kids are in college, they will tell me that there's a lot of stress around climate change for them. They're very stressed about it. Now my daughter's in the environmental science area, so you know, maybe that's part of the reason, but there's other people too that are in the environmental area that are stressed about climate change, because it's their world. I mean, it's, you know, we're all of us here, I don't think any of us here are 20. Cameron, you look like you might be the youngest. I can't tell on some of the others, but you know, we're yeah, so they have a passion for this more than a lot of other people. So okay. Sorry, Harvey, your turn.
Okay, so I'm in a different sort of unique position. I went to Newtown Forest Association, and we are the largest landowner in the town of Newtown. We own 1,300 acres, and that's divided amongst 90 separate properties. And we used our money from Sustainable CT last summer to hire interns to maintain our trails, improve them, and to cut trails. And it was very fortuitous, because this year with the COVID virus, we have been hammered with guests who have been using our trails. We are trying to increase our parking availability and do everything we can, because everybody is outside now doing things on our property. The position I'm in is unique in the sense that the town of Newtown has formed a commission called Bike and Trails. And their charter is to improve and connect all the hiking trails in Newtown. And since we are the largest landowner in Newtown, we are intimately involved with that process. And when I say intimately involved, my wife is the chairman of that commission. So we have instant feedback. We have a feedback loop between ourselves on things to do. So now we have an all-volunteer land trust, and all of a sudden we're involved with the town in a way we've never been before. I find myself now working with the local COG, doing GPS maps, things like that. The town land use commission is all over us like a coat of wet paint to get these trails going. The bike and hike commission has received a grant from the Federal Parks Department to help them with planning Trout Unlimited, since some of these trails, proposed trails, are going to go by waterways, is involved. I know that Sustainable CT gave a grant to the Catherine Violet Hubbard Animal Sanctuary to put in an eco-type garden. And one of the trails we're planning is to go from downtown Newtown to the Catherine Violet Hubbard Sanctuary. I have also encouraged the Bike Commission to apply for sustainable CT grants. Unfortunately, the one they submitted last year didn't float, but Abe, we're hoping to reapply again next year. We are trying to put in a children's bicycle park. We had a donation of 120 children's bicycles, new bikes that we lend to children. We give them a bike, a helmet, and a lock for them to use. And hopefully they'll be using it in the new park. We are establishing a greenway. And a greenway, I thought was just a greenway, but it does have a special meaning. A greenway is a trail that anybody can use, not only for walking and hiking and biking, but for baby carriages and strollers and wheelchairs. So it has to either be paved or hard packed sand and gravel, but it's going to go from downtown Newtown about 2 miles to Fairfield Hills. And Fairfield Hills is a 200-acre former residential facility. And Newtown is sort of, building it up as the focus of the town because it has fields, playing fields, and buildings and parks. So all of Newtown is going to be connected by trails, and that's going to be a joint venture between the 501c3 Land Trust that I'm director of and the town's Park, Bike and Hike Commission. We couldn't do it together. We were never in this environment before, but now I'm playing with federal officials all the time. I'm playing with people who are asking for easements. I'm playing with all sorts of people, and it's really going to change the character and the face of the town. So everyone who's working on their own separate projects and doing it by yourselves, that's wonderful. But I would stress that everybody look outside their own little silo and invite other organizations to work in concert with them. So much for that.
Thanks, Harvey. Exciting to hear about everything that you guys have planned too. And so one of the things that we can talk about this afterwards, but there are a couple of different groups that have led Greenway and mountain biking trail projects through the Match Fund. There's a super successful one going on in Oxford right now, where they set out to raise $7,500. They're at like 8,500. They've gotten 120 plus donors, so tons of support for the project. And the Litchfield Community Greenway has run 2 projects with us and that have both been really successful. So in line with what you're talking about, and this is sort of one of our goals for these meetings too, one is to connect with other groups in town. And it's important for us to understand how we can better help you guys connect with other folks where we might have connections or know people, as well as with local government, right? So to find out how that interaction, those conversations that we facilitate, how we can make those more meaningful and more collaborative. But then the other side of this is connecting the people who are doing this type of work all over the state, right? Even if it's not nearby and you're not going to have a greenway that goes from Litchfield to Newtown, the lessons and even like the vendors that people use, but the work that everyone's doing is interrelated. So maybe one thing too, if this would be totally separate, but if you guys have, if there are groups that you'd like to connect with, or there are thoughts about that you have for how we could better foster some of that collaboration and make these things less one-off, more collaborative, whether it's regional projects or just groups who are doing this work, sharing their knowledge and connecting and helping each other. Feel free to post that in the chat to chime in here or to send me emails afterwards. I also know we're at 11 o'clock. I'm free until at least 12. So if folks want to stay on and keep talking, I'm happy to keep the Zoom open and to keep going, but I don't want to keep people who, if you need to drop off, feel free to drop off. If you want to stay, this is a lot of fun. So I'd love to keep going.
Abe, I do need to step away, but thank you so much for hosting this and for everyone who came and listened. If anyone has questions, I'd be happy to talk. Abe has my contact information. You can feel free to forward that along, but thanks again, Abe.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Trent. This was awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I'll spam the group with your contact info.
Sure. Thank you, everybody.
And Abe,
Kathy, I think that's you, but it seems like your audio may not be coming through well.
Can I just quickly, I do want to say, a few people have written in saying on the chat saying they'd like to do the site visit thing. And I did want to make sure folks understood, I'm not looking just, for Hartford or urban ones. I'd love to get out to some of these beautiful green spaces in beautiful rural Connecticut and some of these beautiful old factory towns and so forth. So I hope that we can do something that is sort of, a sample project in each region.
I think that'd be great. Let's talk more about that, Carrie. I don't necessarily mean right now, but we'll continue those conversations. So I don't know, for the folks who are still on, do you guys, this is loose time, right? It's whatever is useful to talk about. Delene, I see you're still here. If you want to share about your project, this is me being selfish, but I'm really curious to hear about what's going on at Broad Street. So if you're at your computer, I'd love to hear about that project. And this is another one of the Love Your Block Hartford projects.
Hi, everyone. I'm Delene Falcon. Thanks, Abe, for having me. Hi, Cameron. Thanks for being patient with me. You were awesome helping me lead the project. So I work with Logan on the Broad Street Art Garden. And what we do is we transform empty lots into, we get the community to tell us what they like. And based on what they say in the popular stuff, we implement those stuff. So when we asked the community, they said they wanted to see an art garden. And so we started on that. We've done the art garden. We have like 10 boxes, and I've raised a lot of the money for that. I'm very proud of that, to be a part of this. We're currently working on the plumbing. So the other day, the plumbers came out. We had some issues with that. We were struggling with the plumbing. So we're finally going ahead with that. And it's the art garden. It has art, which is pretty unique, because normally when you have garden, you don't have a lot of art there. And it has a playground. So we also gonna build in another phase, like a pirate ship and stuff like that. So I'm very excited about it, about these things. And with the other stuff that's going on, it's a great idea Carrie had. I was so excited when she brought that up, because I love this stuff. And just to be like seeing others is just like, a passion times like 1,000 or something, just to see what other people are doing. So I'd love to be able to go on like a tour with others, passionate people. It's just like amazing thought. I like what Kimora is doing, like how she raised with the Cash App. I never thought of that. So I like this space that you can learn a lot of unique ways that I never thought of like ways of raising money and stuff like that. So yeah. And another thing with Hartford City, we lack a sense of community. It's badly needed here, and we struggle with mental health. So a lot of this stuff, no one really like tracks what this will do for mental health, but it should begin, because mental health is huge in this country. It's a missing link, and all of these projects are tapping into that. And so I get really excited because I know what it does for a lot of people's mental health to have these spaces, to have a sense of community. A lot of times we isolate because we have the media, we have, Facebook, and that can't replace human connections. And so this is the important part that is missing, what these projects allow people to do, right? It gives a sense of community, a sense of belonging, and it's a lot bigger, than right now. I think it's very huge. We can, track in the future, how does this help bring down mental health issues all across the country, So I see this in a much broader sense than just doing these projects. It's very huge. There's a lot of missing link that hasn't been linked in as of yet, you know. And so, like I said, I'm excited about Carrie's idea because I'm passionate about this stuff. So just being around like-minded, passionate people and seeing what they're into, it's like an addiction almost. So yeah. Yeah, that's all I have to say right now.
Thanks, Deline. Awesome to hear about what you're doing, and sort of like the inspiration and the motivation. And I totally agree about the mental health as well, right? How important that is. Kamora, I saw that you unmuted yourself, and I saw you nodding to some of those things. So I'll let you take it.
Oh yeah. Well, first off, I've got like notes. I'm like over here taking notes, and so I'm super excited that the highest point in Hartford is in Zion Hill Cemetery. I don't know what we're going to do about like view and being lofty and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come visit you at some point. I'm gonna stand on this high point, and I'm gonna see what my vision will look like. That's beautiful, right? So all of those are beautiful, but there's when you started talking about the mental health component, that is a place where I've been frustrated with traditional funding, because traditional funders, and I understand philanthropy and I understand needing to be conservative with the way that we use our money, but me needing to prove somehow that in 18 months I've made a marked difference using someone's checklist on what mental health looks like is impossible. So in many places, as we're looking at what we do, like, so Zion Hill Cemetery, and I'm just thinking about this completely. This is this space that is in the middle of Frog Hollow. There are, I think you said, am I right? Are there 4 Jewish cemeteries pulled together in one? So we've got a community, and there really is, in Frog Hollow, there still is a Jewish community, and there's still folks who've had their houses forever who are there. But for the most part, that community doesn't live, or the community that cemetery was created for doesn't live right there. So you've got people who don't feel or see a connection. And this way, and definitely thinking about the crowdsourcing component, this creates a place for us really to create those connections and to remind ourselves that we are a community. So like, this is super exciting. When I hear the Sustainable CT, we're a very small state with great folks doing amazing things throughout the state. And it's awful that I don't know what's happening in Stamford, but it's even more disgusting that I don't know what's happening on Park Street or Broad Street. And that, as someone who loves Hartford and loves old cemeteries, and really I'm going to send you, a friend of mine years ago wrote an essay about how what we needed to do was turn New Britain into a roller coaster, because what Hartford needed was a new vision. And if we could just like get rid of New Britain, turn it into a roller coaster, we could be up high and see Hartford from a different view, right? So I'm thinking about that, but I didn't know that as a Hartford lover, I did not know that piece. Thank you for sharing that. But how do we make sure that we do this? Through crowdfunding, through coming up with these cute little 2-minute videos. So forget what the funder inside their glass building downtown that drives back out of my city, forget what they care about. What do the people who live on Zion Street, on Broad Street, on Lincoln Street, but on the streets that are right around, what do they think? What do they care about? And how are we bringing them in? This is where this, like, I get excited. This is the beautiful part. I don't need funders with money in deep pockets who go to philanthropy conferences in California to know what I do. I need the people who live next door to where I'm doing it to know what I do and believe in it. You excited me. That was kind of awesome.
I'm wondering if I can talk, if Deline has any more specifics on the art project part of it, because we keep talking about it on the Garden on the Bridge, and how can we bring kids in to do art? Where can we put it? How can we make it reflect both our very multicultural history and our whole demographics, so everybody's inclusive? And we're not really sure how to do that. So I was curious.
So it's a pity I can't post the pictures right now of what it looks like. So we have the art is put up in the garden already. We have OPP, Art Piece of the Pie, that did the artwork, and youths from OPP worked on the garden, helped to build the garden and stuff like that. But because the community, the inner city lacks this sense of community, they're always moving. A lot of them don't own their own home. So whenever the landlord decides to, okay, I need more money or whatever, they get shifted around, and that leaves a lack of this community feeling. People don't know their next door neighbor and stuff like that. So we have the young youths, they do the art, they come by and they just tell us their vision and stuff like that, and get them involved.
If I could just mention a thing, the portion in particular about mental health is, is I think also a really exciting and, as you say, underserved, like under kind of appreciated aspect of this conversation. And it's interesting that that's one, like with many of the value adds that you have with sort of environmental projects or public art projects or, things like that. One of the things that causes them seems to cause them to fold prematurely is like lack of an immediate return, right? But when we're thinking about mental health, when we're thinking about climate, these are long-term struggles. These are long-term issues, right? And so like many of the solutions to them are not going to produce, like a photographable return, within a year for the next round of donation. So I'm curious, if this came up, I know I was late to this morning's meeting, trying to get an advanced start on shoveling, but yeah, if there, if anybody has any thoughts about how to kind of like sort of talk about the long-term plans, right? And, because I think that sometimes this cycle of, nonprofits and donations moves too quickly for the type of meaningful work that a lot of these projects involve, it seems like. Thanks.
Yeah, if I could just jump in on that, the mental health and quantifying that. There is an increasing amount of work on that. And in fact, there was an interesting study that's submitted right now for publication during COVID that showed that it was a standardized scale on flourishing. So some of the scales that try and quantify this kind of thing are scales of flourishing or well-being, etc. So they're not on specific populations like at-risk teens or veterans or people who already have mental illness. These are on, people who aren't diagnosed with any specific problem. And when they looked at this flourishing scale, they found that being deprived of nature, which was broadly defined, was worse than losing your wages and second only to losing your entire job. So I think that there's, it's hard maybe to find a really actionable outcome for a specific project within, let's say, a year, but there's so much literature out there that could be really kind of bootstrapped together to make a very strong case for this.
And that's all incredibly important. So if you can share some of that information with me, that I want to see what that looks like. And I think that one of the things that I love about this is this says we don't need to do that. And I come from a community where there's lots of research that around us and lots of research around us that sits on shelves and lots of research around us that creates places where people who are not us can make money off of us. And what I really appreciate about this is we know, so I shouldn't have to explain to absolutely everyone what a standing warrant means and why absolutely every place on Albany Avenue where you can buy a thing has a standing warrant, which means that if I happen to be outside standing and breathing for 2 minutes, it is legal for 3 minutes. It is legal for a police officer to come arrest me for being outside. So I shouldn't have to say, we need green spaces because to then have a person explain to me about the green spaces that are there, for me to then explain to them how racism and, well, let me tell you about the places in Keeney Park where we can hang out, and let me explain to you how the police use those areas, and let me explain to you that I have absolutely none of these benefits of being outside if my being outside, meaning that there are 2 police cruisers that are out there, and all of my PTSD comes up when I'm anywhere near the police, and so they've taken away. I shouldn't have to explain all of that. I should just say, yo, give me money. You know we need something. You know the kids get arrested out there on Albany Avenue. Please, why are we even explaining this? And that, I think, is what I appreciate about this, because the people who are the funders of my project are never, honestly, they're never going to be asked. They, many of my funders, they're not folks who are going to be filling out any of these surveys. They're not people who are going to be invited to any of these types of forms. They are people who, if they happen to be at a place where supposedly folks are looking for their opinion in a high school gymnasium, there's a Visa gift card for them or a bag of food that says, no matter what that funder up in front of you says, you agree with it, because that's how we build community, because that's how we get the money to get the crumbs. So I'm just going to push back just a little bit, and not even push back, because it's not an either or, it's an and. And that we need the research and we need this information, but we also need to understand that racism, poverty, America's foundation, all of these factors create such a muddy place that there's stuff that can't be quantified or qualified, and we just need to fund what needs to happen. So if 4 people say, I want this on my block, it should happen on my block without me having a white paper written by someone that's been peer reviewed by someone else that proves that it's a thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was just going to write something in the chat, which I think I'm on the Science and Technology Committee for the GC3, and I tried to basically say, look, a lot of this is like grandmother advice. What's the right thing to do? This is local stuff. People know what the right thing to do is. We have to provide people equity, a decent quality of life, and basic stuff, I'm just trying to say, if we need to pull together, numbers or whatever, we can probably pull that together. But the bottom line is common sense, right? And then you could say, okay, the science supports it. It's like, I keep on saying, it's like grandmother advice in a lot of cases. So, why do we need science to support grandmother advice? Because that's what people listen to. But I completely agree. It's very frustrating for me.
It is, and I personally, I depend on the research. The research is necessary. I can't tell you how many times I've been allowed to be in a space and sound as ignorant as I can. I truly, truly, truly love finding people like da-da-da-da, sounding ridiculous, and then throwing out the white paper and saying, and the CDC said this, so da-da-da-da. But it's wonderful to have both. And I think that and again, one of the things that I love about this is, as a trauma-affected, nonprofit, informed community, we do a great job of running off to say, but Harvard said, but UConn said, but this one said, but that one said, and this proves my need, rather than stepping into that authentic place of, but I have a need and I know what I need. And so a big part of what we're doing with this is also not giving voice, because giving voice is great, but giving teeth and giving power to folks who've been marginalized and who have been at that places. Again, as I do this, there are lots of wonderful folks who come in with that nice smile to explain to me the right way to do this. And what I need folks to understand is to represent my community and to not be the great savior who comes in and helps my community, but to be the example that creates a place where people can do what they need to do. I need to throw away the research and ignore it. I will bring it. I will, after the meeting, I will send folks, this research, and you might want to see what's happening in Salt Lake City, and this is how it's been researched. But I need to show up and just like, grandmother advice. Dude, what? Really? I've got to go. I've got to get ready. I've got a community conversation starting in 45 minutes, and I want to get some food and give my child a bath first.
You got to get your energy back up so you can match the start of the presentation here. And
got the coffee going. Got the coffee going. Thank you, Abe. Thank you so much. And really, I appreciate all of the work of everyone in here. I thank you so much. I appreciate all of y'all.
Thank you, Kumar. This was great. So I realized I should ask this question before people, we dropped down to about half of who we had at the start. But so the intention for this is to do it every 2 months. We could do it more frequently if you guys want to and think it's useful. We just don't want to, there's Zoom burnout, right? Like everybody gets tired of doing too much of that. So if you have thoughts for what would be most useful for you guys and for the other people, right? So I've seen some things in the chat here. Kathy, I know you've mentioned people who have project ideas in mind, but don't want to crowdfund or aren't sure of this. So one thing is, for the future ones of these, feel free to invite anyone that has an idea, anybody that has the beginning of an idea, or the folks who don't want to crowdfund but are doing this type of stuff. And feel free to invite any of those people, because I think this is, it's impactful for all of us to hear about people's story, their projects, their crowdfunding. But the whole goal of this is that sort of similar to what Kumar and what everyone's been saying, that anybody can lead a project. Anybody can see, hey, here's what we need in my neighborhood, in my block, in my town, in my city, whatever. So feel free to invite any of those people. But what do you guys think would be most useful, most helpful for future sessions? I thought about organizing them as based on topic, right? So today was loosely about green spaces and environmental solutions, but it doesn't have to be by project topic, right? It could just be about, we could talk about crowdfunding, we could talk about creating regional connections and things like that. So I mean, feel free to pop these in the chat or to unmute and make suggestions if you have things that you'd like to hear about in future ones. It's open.
CJ here from Waterbury. Waterbury just joined Sustainable CT this year. I'm very happy about that. I'm only peripherally involved in that step, but for me, as a new community that could make use of this, any of this is very helpful, because I'm happy to hear about specific projects. I'm happy to hear about the philosophy behind what kind of project, and people's war stories about how I didn't like it and then I did like it. So this all just percolates around in my brain. So I'm happy for this to be every 2 months. I'm be happy for it to be every month. I don't even really care. I get something out of it. And I think because we're all sort of Zoom bound these days, we might not attend everyone. So you could have it every month, but we might be able to attend every other month. And still, I think I'd get something out of this. I'm not sure how other people are.
Awesome. Thanks, CJ. And good to see you.
I think one thing, I've already put one in the chat, which was about, I would love to just meet with all the Hartford-based projects, just because Free Center already has like a strong relationship with Comoros Cultural Corner, which is nice because they're in the North End and we're in the South End, but having more of that connectivity between neighborhoods and neighborhood projects is something that I think it would be really, really great, especially in the spring as all of these green projects start to really be green again. But the other thing that I thought would be good, which kind of came up at one point in this conversation, would be more about other types of resource sharing. Like, you know, who is a good person or company or whatever it is to go to for this need, especially since a lot of us are working on outdoor projects and maybe this is our first time doing these types of projects. Just different types of resource sharing might be helpful as we move forward into the spring. Because it goes beyond just like the money. It's also knowing how to spend it.
You've got to have,
which I'm still figuring out.
But you got to know where to get the supplies, right? Which vendors to use. I mean, like Comoros is a case where she's had a terrible time finding an excavator and getting someone out there to do the work. And one thing too, actually, this is not really important, right? But all the time we hear about people who are buying, they talk about the supplies that they're getting. And sometimes we see budgets and it's like Amazon. And then other times it's Home Depot. And ultimately, you know, we don't care where people get the supplies for their projects. What matters is that these projects happen. But it would be great to know about local or regional sources too, whether it's vendors, whether it's products, things like that. Because a lot of our program and, you know, Sustainable CT as a whole, but particularly the match fund, it's all about local and doing things within your community. So I think that's a great idea. Finding out, you know, more about, don't buy it from Amazon, buy it from the local, go to Hartford Prints or something like that, right? Or go to the local hardware store that's owned by someone who lives in the town or the city. That one would probably be a little bit more work, just in that folks would have to come prepared with their vendors and their suppliers and things like that. But it could also be community groups, right? Because so one of the things that I tried to do in setting this up was inviting different sort of like affiliate groups, the Nature Conservancy, different groups that are national, but also local, who have big time resources and can support on these types of projects too. Because that's one of the things we want to see is that local people do a project is great, but if there are these other guys who can come in and not take over the project, but support it and build those relationships, that would be really neat to see, I think. So thanks. I've noted that.
It could also be developed as just like a directory. Like if you set up like a forum that like, just as people do their projects, if you do have a particularly good experience with a certain group or vendor, you can just like submit it so that other people then have access to that knowledge. So I think that knowledge sharing is like something that historically doesn't always happen enough, and is something that is really helpful as we're all kind of working separately but together. So
I think it could also, in a way, be a time saver for a lot of future projects like this too. You know, the project that I'm working on I've been working on for maybe 5 months, like since July. And a lot of the first few months of that was making phone calls and sending emails and discovering that people had been working on similar things and I just didn't know about it and they weren't publicizing it. So I think that like a lot of this kind of networking aspect is really helpful, but also for the sake of, you know, not only for the sake of kind of understanding resources and resource sharing and things like that, but also just kind of the kind of like, yeah, understanding where the points of expertise are, so that someone doesn't have to start from scratch every time. And I know that that's like a lot of the things that for grassroots projects, that's a thing that can really take the wind out of one's sails, is kind of like having to write the rule book for yourself. So I think that that would be a pretty great like resource if that was available, of just even some kind of spreadsheet of like, for this project for creating a green space, I used this landscaper, or this this power tool company, or something like that, or something like that. So and then just having that as a way to to just take some more of the guesswork out.
Yeah, so actually that's a really good idea, and we can build that into, we send out a post-implementation survey when people have finished their project, right, asking how stuff went. So I'm just going to add that into the survey. I'll put a section for, were there vendors that you worked with, suppliers, contractors, or were there organizational partners that supported you in the work. So like one thing that we've seen on a bunch of projects is that Yukon Clear and Nemo have helped people if they're doing rain garden stuff, or there was a project about downspout planters and things like that. So thanks. I'll incorporate that into the survey, and then hopefully we can build out sort of a database of that, of information for you guys. Adam, I know on your end, certainly there's been a lot of running around and trying to figure things out. So it would definitely help to have that information beforehand.
I'd just like to add in that, we're a very small scale project in Thomaston, but we are a sustainable Connecticut community, and we've had meetings throughout our fundraising time, and just to get interest going with our local town committees, the Lions Club, the Women's Club, FACT we have, which is the Fine Arts Committee, all of which gave us input as to what they wanted to see happening, or pie in the sky about our project if they could see it. And there are funds sometimes that they raise that they're looking to distribute and have shared with our project. One of the things we emphasized was also that we are going to try to resource through local contractors and as much local people as we can, which really did seem to strike a nerve in a good way with our meetings with so many people in our committees. And we have had some good progress in that regard. So, I understand there could be a lot of frustration, limited resources if you really only try to contract locally. But for a project such as mine, it would be, I think, something to bear in mind. Your local civic organizations, even though they seem small, are somebody that can want to contribute to something that will benefit the town.
Yeah, and those are also folks who sometimes donate to the campaigns, right? So we've got a couple of projects that are going now where it's energy efficiency campaigns, and the vendors who will, it's not like a pay to play, but the vendors who they're working with for home energy solutions and stuff like that, because they do stand to benefit from this, they're also contributing to the campaign. I mean, it's in line with, it's not necessarily altruistic, but it's connecting with local resources and then saying to those local resources, hey, you're a part of this, you're going to benefit from this program, chip in and help make this project possible. So that's an interesting way to sort of leverage some of those resources too, right? When connecting with local folks and just to build stuff out. I mean, we've had projects where somebody's, they're looking to contract with the local electrician is one of them. And then the guy hears about the project and goes, I'll just do that pro bono. Like, I'll do it for free. Of course, I'll help this. It's a community project. So where you don't get that if you reach out probably to the group that's maybe statewide and they have a local office or something, but like they're not connected to the community. So I think there are a lot of benefits beyond multi-purpose benefits to doing things locally. I also know we're at 11:30 now, so I've got something at 12 that Elizabeth, I'll be seeing you there, but I want to try to look through your report. So thank you guys for joining and for staying on. This has been a ton of fun. I'll send out, once we figure out exactly when the next session will be and what it'll be focused on. If you have thoughts about stuff that you'd like to see, shoot me an email, let me know. If you want to present about your project too, I do think that'll be fun every time to have a couple of people talking about the work that they did and just sort of like inspiring others. So if you're doing a project and you want to talk about it, let me know and we'll sign you up to present. But other than that, thank you guys. Great to see everybody. And I'll follow up. Zoe, for people that messaged about specific things, I'll follow up about those much sooner too.
Thanks.
All
Thanks,
right.
Abe. Thanks for all your work.
Yeah, of course. Enjoy the snow.
Yeah.
Adam, have fun.
Thanks, Abe.
Thank you.
My takeaways are climate change and mental health. And mental health is huge for a lot of this stuff. So really very exciting. Didn't think about that part of it till today, till the labyrinth. How do you say that? I didn't think about the mental health part until that. So,
well, your follow-up, your homework to get you a labyrinth going in Cheshire too.
Yep. I'm going to talk to Fiona right now. I'm going to recall. All right.
Awesome.
See ya.
Take care, guys. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.